Hi, so I'm going to talk to you today about how you can get engaged. Because I know that at 14, that's your biggest concern right now is engagement, right? Because you all want to get engaged in learning. So throughout this PowerPoint, it's an interactive PowerPoint or interactive slideshow. So as we're going through, I'm going to tell you to pause the video and you're going to actually go into your Google Slides that you've downloaded a copy of. Take that copy and put it into your Google Classroom. And put it into your Google Classroom. Put it into your Drive and the EDUC 1300 part. Just dump it in there somewhere. If you want to make a folder that says notes, you can. There are going to be a couple other things we're going to put in there. But take this PowerPoint or this slideshow, put it into EDUC 1300, and then you can access it to work on it as we go through this video, where I'm the star of the show, and this is the best movie ever. Okay, so I know you guys missed me today, but we're going to try it this way. If it works, we'll do it again. If not, y'all never have to look at this. Okay, up here we have two different links. One of these links I want you to go to in just a minute. This bottom one right here is all about sketch notes. Some of you who are visual learners, oral learners, or even kinesthetic learners can really benefit from using sketch notes throughout your note-taking process. So we're going to look at note-taking and how sketch notes could be valuable. So what I want you to do right now, go ahead and pause this, like, and click on this bottom link, watch the video about sketch notes, see how it would apply to you, and then come back to this page. Welcome back. So I hope you stopped for video. I don't know if you did, but okay, so we're back. This top one up here is again about some other types of sketch notes that you could use. I think, actually that link I think goes to more information about Cornell notes. And if you want to look at it, it gives you a little bit more to look at, but we're going to look at Cornell notes throughout the presentation. So moving on to the next slide. Have you ever known somebody who's been engaged, right? And they're like so in love that it's disgusting. You've known this person, or maybe they're not engaged yet, but they're so disgusting. Like all they talk about is love. All they talk about is how much they want to be with that other person. All they talk about is how they want to be around them. They spend their time and energy thinking about that other person. They listen to what they want. They listen to their desires. They make note of those things, and then they spend all their time together, and it's really gross and disgusting. You wish they would just get a life. You're like, please, can we just, ew. Well, today, I want you to get that way about your education. Because let me tell you, the chemistry between you and chemistry will be more valuable to you than any chemistry that you develop between you and your classmates or peers, especially here at Top Star. Anyway, these people are committed, but if you can get this committed about your learning and about your education, then you're going to be able to make tremendous bounds. So we're going to look at this. First of all, engaged learners, we're all getting engaged today. Just put a ring on it. We're getting engaged. Engaged learners are involved with the what experience. Now, if you look on pages 75, look on page 75 in your textbook, you're going to find these answers in your book. So I want you to look at this slide. Engaged learners are involved with the blank experience. They spend the time and energy necessary in and out of the what. They listen and they use skills. So what I want for you to do right now is go ahead and stop the video again. And look in your textbook, fill in these different blanks. Now, if you want to, you can use a different color of font. You could use italics, whatever you want, so that it kind of differentiates between my words and what was originally there and what you've added into the PowerPoint presentation. So go ahead and stop right now and do that. Welcome back. It feels so corny. All right, so here we are on our next slide. On this slide, you're going to define active learning. So you're going to need to look back into your textbook. I could give you the definition for it, but I want you to look it up. Put a definition in for active learning. When you're done with this, we'll talk about these different items. Okay, so first of all, it's important that you work with others. If you are an oral learner or you are a kinesthetic learner, it is vital for you to go beyond your read-write, go beyond your visual conception of the task assigned to you in biology and math. If you are an oral or a kinesthetic learner, you have got to engage in learning with other people. Let's face it, learning does not always occur in the classroom. We would like, as teachers, we would like to believe that you are sitting in our presence and somehow you're absorbing all of this material. That's not how engagement occurs. That's not how learning occurs. Learning is often done through self-teaching. You get exposed to ideas in the classroom and you're like, I've never thought of that before. But then when you go and you work with somebody else, that's when your learning actually is going to be taking place, because you're telling them what you've observed, or you're saying, I don't understand this concept, and you're talking to somebody else. If you're oral or kinesthetic, and you guys have done this, you did your learning modalities, if you're one of those two, you have got to engage with other people. So we're getting engaged, we're talking, we're doing this active learning. Additionally, you've got to hone your skill. We think, we listen, we write, and we speak from a very young age. But if you are not, is it still going? No. Okay, but if you are not constantly getting better at these things by practicing them, then you're going to be at a standstill. These are skills that you have to always work on. And this is all in your book, so I'm just kind of going, not every time will we go through the chapter by point, but this time we are, so that we can really look at how it is to delve into a textbook. You're teaching yourself. Good learners take that material that they've been exposed to in the classroom and they start to teach themselves, they work on it themselves. They're also going to be very careful with time management, managing your time. Now, I was talking with Mr. CV just a little while ago, and he gave me this great tip. And you know what? It's backed up in all kinds of research that I've been doing lately. I was watching a TED Talk. I've done some other research on this. Retrieval learning system is the best learning system available. Retrieval learning is where you expose yourself to it once, you read through, then you take a break from it. And then when you come back from your break, you write down everything you can remember, not looking back in the book, not looking back at your notes. You're just trying to remember, what was it about those cells? What was it about? And you write down everything you know. Then you take those notes and you review with what you had done and what you had read before from your notes. So you've got your retrieval notes and you compare it to the original notes. And you fill in the blanks. Then you take a break and you go do the laundry, or I don't know if y'all do laundry. I do laundry all day long. But you do whatever it is. You go play outside, which, by the way, physical activity is beneficial for your learning experience. But you go do something and then you come back to it and you read a little bit more. You study a little bit more. Maybe you quiz yourself over a couple of questions. And then you go do something else. And then you come back to it. Every time you take a break in your learning, you spend 15, 20 minutes at one session. Every time you take a break and then come back, it activates the memory so that it retains for a longer period of time. So you want to take those breaks, but you've got to spend time studying or you can't ever learn those things. And then finally, I'm not really sure why your textbook includes this, but it's important to be sensitive to cultural differences, especially when working in groups, so that your learning experience can be a positive thing. Okay, here, considering all of you visual learners, I've got several different items that are also found in your textbook. You want to be engaged before you go into that learning experience. The textbook is obvious. It means that you need to read ahead of time. You need to read through the material, even if you don't understand a word of it. Because if you read it before you go into the classroom, when your teacher starts talking, when your instructor starts talking, you're going to be like, oh, I've seen that word before because I read it in my book. And I didn't understand the concept in the book, but now that they're discussing it, now that they're explaining it, I get it. But if you've never had exposure to that before you get into the classroom, then you're starting at square one, whereas if you had read it beforehand, you're already ready to move on. The syllabus. The syllabus is talked about in your textbook. It's not a thing that we use often in a high school classroom, but when you're in college, it's used frequently. In your syllabus, it will explain exactly how you're going to be graded. On that point scale, it'll tell you this is what you have to turn in, and this is when you have to do it by. Often on a syllabus, it will have a time, like a schedule, and sometimes the schedule may change a little bit. But here, gosh, we don't even have a normal week ever. Y'all know that. We've had one normal week? And so the schedule is constantly changing. In a typical college experience, that's not happening all the time. So in your textbook, remember it's written for traditional college students, In a textbook, it talks about the importance of the syllabus so that you'll know what you need to read beforehand, what you're going to be graded on, and it gives you some insight into what's coming up in that lecture for that day. It talks about teacher notes in your textbook also, because sometimes our teachers provide us with more than just textbook reading, but they'll give us videos to watch. Perhaps Mr. CV will upload a video about the cells, and so you can observe that, have an idea of how it works, even before you get engaged, even before you're in the classroom. When you get engaged, you go pick out the ring way beforehand. You're like, ooh, what would be a romantic way to propose? This is stuff you do before you even get to the classroom. Just like the guy, before he even gets to the girl, he starts thinking about what he's going to do. All right. This one, I know you're probably like, I don't know why they're stretching. You said we need to go outside. Yeah, that's right. I know what you're thinking because that's what every other student has already said to me. But that is not what that stands for. It means warm up. Okay, so if you're like me, you walk into a math class, you're going into Mr. Genser's class, and you're like, I don't know, my brain thinks different when I have to do math. So, in fact, somebody was telling me that they have to do this before they go into like even Miss Picasso. She's so nice, she's so organized. But before you start, you kind of got to go thinking like a mathematician now. And you have to, like, if you look back over your notes, you do something before it starts, your brain is primed. It's ready to think like math. If you come into EDUC 1300, I don't know, sometimes y'all just come in here brain dead, but you got to kind of get ready for some creative thinking when you're in my room, right? So you just prepare yourself. So this is the warm up, this is stretching. So you don't want to strain your brain while you're in math. So you should like look at it before he starts talking so you're ready. Okay, and then finally, Miss Picasso is the most organized person I've ever met in my whole life. She's like organized perfection. You look around my room, go ahead. Look up from your desk right now. Look around the room. There's like messes everywhere. But you look in Miss Picasso's room, it's tidy. That's how your notebooks should look, okay? Your drives need to be organized. Your notebooks need to be tidy and neat. Otherwise, when you go in there, you can't even. And dude, stop forgetting your Chromebooks because every day, you're going to need it. So yeah, be organized. By the way, in PCC, we are next 9 weeks going to be doing another binder check. So keep up with your stuff. Okay, when you're active during class, I could go through each one of these. I'm not going to because on the next slide, you're actually going to start typing stuff in about each one of these. And so I'm going to give you that. I do want to say this. This is going to change your life. It's going to revolutionize your whole existence. Okay, here we go. I wish in your book it had 2 and 3 and 6 like all combined because you have to keep an open mind when you're in the classroom. How many of you've been in an argument, right? I feel like I'm talking to myself right now. You've been in an argument and you're so like aggravated with somebody. Isaac, come here. Join me in the movie. Peyton, come here. Okay. They're going to join me so we can make this. Okay, Isaac. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and they say, yes, they say something to you, and let's say it's a person that you're not supposed to back talk, okay? You're not supposed to like pop off and say whatever you want, but she's saying something and you feel passionately about something else. And she's talking and she's talking, and in your brain, you've already started thinking, and you're not even really listening because she's ranting, and you already know this happens to you, yeah?
With my mom, all the time.
All the time, right? So you're like brain dead. They might as well just stop talking because you're not listening. Yeah. Okay. Has this ever happened to you? You've been in a class, and the teacher starts talking, and you disagree with what they're saying, and so it's like your brain stops, and everything after that point, you're not with them. It's frustrating, isn't it?
Get in the video if you're going to talk.
You have to come over here if you're going to talk. Okay, so tell us about your experience.
Okay, so I got grounded, and my mom said she was going to take Snapchat off my phone because
then you'd lose your streaks.
Exactly. And then I tried to convince her to let me get it back, and she did eventually.
Get in the video.
But I suggested it to her, and she was no. I'm like,
okay, so she wasn't even really willing to listen. So here's the deal. It happens to us all the time. They all agree that sometimes somebody says something to you, and in your brain, you're thinking of every argument imaginable, and you don't hear anything that's said after that point. In science, you disagree. There's a theory presented, and you're like, I don't believe that. So everything that happens after that, you don't even listen. You know what I mean? You don't know what I mean. I'm listening now anyway. All right, y'all get out of my. I'm the star of the show. Adios, people. All right, this will revolutionize. This is going to change your whole world. When this happens, when you are like brain stops, and all you can think about is this one ruminating idea, which, by the way, rumination is a very interesting thing. Rumination is when your brain can't move past a particular idea. It's stuck. Cows ruminate. They're ruminating animals. They chew their cud, they swallow it, it stays in their belly, then it regurgitates, they chew it again, they swallow it. And it's like it happens over and over. A ruminating idea can't get out of your brain. When this happens during a lecture, you can't stop taking notes. You can't be like, oh, I'm stuck on this thought and I can't get past it. Maybe in math, you've always done something one particular way, and your teacher says, I'm going to show you a new way to do it. And you're like, no, you're not. You're not going to show me a new way to do this. I've always done it this way. In your brain, when this happens, stop in your notes for a second. Write down the thing that's bothering you. Write down, I don't understand X. Or write down, I don't believe this, whatever it is. Or write down, Mr. Genser is never going to teach me a new math skill because I'm mad. And then, now here's the key. You've written it down. Now you can let it go. Don't worry about it. Keep following him and his thoughts and his process with the notes. You can always go back, okay? Once you have the question written down, you can always go back to that question and see if it's been answered. You can always look back and remember that you were frustrated at that point. But if you hang on to that frustration, if you allow it to ruminate in your brain and you refuse to move past it, then you miss all of the other important notes and you don't even hear what the instructor is telling you. If you write it down and dismiss it, you can move on. So I'm telling you, it works, especially if you're ever in meetings, if you're ever in a classroom experience. Dude, even if you're working with somebody that your parent or something, allow your brain to say, it's okay to be in disagreement, but I can't stay there because what they're saying, I've got to listen. So write it down and move on. What I want you to do now is go ahead and skip to the next page. On the next slide, you're going to include your notes from 4.3. So look in your textbook, and when you're on this page, I want you to give a little bit of description about each one of these sections from your book. So you can stop your video now. I'm going to stop ranting and raving. Go ahead and go into that part of your book. Put your notes and thoughts down. Don't spend a lot of time on it. If you don't have a lot of class time, you're going to end up having to do this at home. So don't spend a lot of time, but go ahead and put your notes down and then come back to the video. All right, welcome back. It feels so weird. All right, so here we have two people totally engaged in a conversation. They're interested in what the other person is saying. I love this picture because, and by the way, we can get into the eye contact thing, which is an interesting concept in itself because the person that's speaking usually looks away while the person who's listening usually makes good eye contact. It's a nonverbal study that we can look at when we look at public speaking or something. But in this particular picture, we've got engagement going on with the conversation. In the classroom, you want to speak up. You want to engage in that classroom and that learning experience. How many of you, and you can turn and talk to your elbow partner if they're at the same part in the video, and if they're not, I don't know, talk to somebody later. But how many of you are hesitant to talk up in class, right? Maybe you don't know the answer. Maybe you're not confident with your skill or ability level. Maybe you don't want to look stupid. Maybe you're shy and don't want to talk to people. I don't know, whatever your reason is. Sometimes we don't talk up in class, but remember, an active learner is going to be engaged in that experience and is going to make the most of it and be where they are. So make eye contact and avoid distraction. Be looking at the front of the room. I know this is not like rocket surgery. You don't do surgery on rockets. But anyway, I know this is not like mind-blowing information. The truth of the matter is, If everybody did it, we would have great participation. But sometimes you guys are on your Chromebooks, you're on your phones, you're writing notes. Dude, just look at the front of the room whenever the teacher's up there talking. I know it's simple, but it doesn't happen. So avoid other distractions, make eye contact. Give your focused attention to that experience. You're only there for a little while. Be there. If you don't understand, ask, of course, raise your hand. If you don't have the opportunity to ask at that point in the lecture, remember, write your thought down, write your question down so that you can come back to it later. Speak up and answer questions. Don't bluff. If you don't know the answer to something, gosh, don't just try to make something up and pretend like you do. And I put these over here. You can ask your friend for help. You can ask for time. You can repeat the question, ask them to, maybe you didn't understand the way it was asked. Or ask where you can get more information. Hey, I'm not really sure on the answer to that, but I'm sure you've told us. Where can I look to find that information? You don't bluff. Don't just pretend like you know something that you don't know. Okay, and then finally, and underline this on your slide whenever you look back at it. Because this right here, and I'm going to give you extra credit for this starting in public speaking next semester. If you have read an article about the subject matter somewhere else, if you've studied it somewhere else, and you bring that into class because you're taking an outside learning experience and putting it into a new environment, when you make those connections, you're going to retain that material for a longer period of time. So you're always going to be looking for connections. Where have I heard or read this before? On this page, I want you to go ahead and take a minute. How often do you volunteer information in class? In what ways do you actively participate? Maybe you go up to the board in math. Maybe you raise your hand to answer questions in Ms. Picasso's class. Maybe you don't feel comfortable speaking out in class, but you make sure to provide information or thoughts on your homework that you turn in. Maybe you go in for tutoring after class so that you can make sure that you understand the material. Those are all ways that you can engage in class. It doesn't have to be raising your hand to answer or ask a question. There are other things that you often do. Maybe it's because you talk to your neighbor. A lot of times you don't want to talk out in class, but you don't mind talking to your neighbor and making sure you understand. So how do you engage in that learning experience in your environment? And then also, what are some reasons that you don't share in class? Now, this is really important, and this is something I'm going to ask you about on Monday. Tell me, what did you do? How did you answer this particular question? All right, so fill that in and then come back. All right, so you just filled in the other part, and now we're going to talk about note taking, and I'm at 22 minutes. So, okay, if you need to leave, you're welcome to stay. But all right, so you grew on me the way Yersinia E. coli grows on spoiled bacon. Get it? It's a love note. We're not talking about this kind of notes. We're talking about these note-taking methods. Now you're going to see each one of these note-taking methods on the next slides, and you're going to have to fill in what kind of note-taking method it is. So let's go ahead and look at the first one. All right, it's an M, and we only had 5 different methods. Only one is an M, so you know what you're going to put on that particular slide. Go ahead and do it. All right, so you've got mapping method for this first slide. It's used for visualizing connected ideas and concepts. It's not easily done in the middle of a lecture unless it's provided for you. If you're taking your notes on a computer, it's very difficult to do it while you are in the classroom. But if you take your notes in a read-write format, just listing, maybe outlining, sentence format perhaps, then you can always come back and do the mapping later. There is a way to do it on your computer. So if we're looking at this particular screen, you just go up to Insert, and then you can insert diagrams, and it provides a lot of different kinds of mapping techniques. So you can take a concept and make it visual. Some of you are visual learners. You need to take those sentence structures and put them into some kind of map so that it makes more sense to you for your learning style. The other thing that you can do is, let me close that one. At Insert, you can put in all kinds of charts, bar, column, line, pie charts, in order to make linear concepts more visual and make them graphic. So next week, I'm going to have you doing some of these things because I want you to take notes and actually apply these concepts to the notes that you've taken. All right, so back into presentation mode. All right, the next one is an outline. Now you could go through this and you could actually have like Roman numeral 1 and then A, 1, 2. You could go through and make it look more like an outline, but basically it has main topics and subtopics. It's really good for read-write learners, but not so great for a visual learner, maybe not even a kinesthetic learner. But sometimes while the teacher is giving you the notes, this is the fastest, easiest way to put them down on paper. Then you can put them into a more familiar or comfortable style at a later time. This is, and on your slides, you're going to need to put all of these in. This one is the charting method. So charting is great for lists of facts. It's great for definitions. If you were going to look at cells, for example, or let's look at organelles, then that's my vacuole. And then I could list what a vacuole is good for. And I don't even remember, you guys have been telling me, I think it's like a container of water and various other fluids or liquids or something like that, waste or I don't know, whatever. So then you can have a picture, so it adds a little bit of visual, but then you can list. And if you have them all side by side, then you can see the differences between each one. Yeah, you could put it in an outline format. Absolutely, you can put it in bullet points, but this way it kind of gives you a little bit more of a graphic organizer so that your notes can be retained for a longer period. This one is sentence structure. The sentence structure, basically each sentence gets its own line, but I would recommend this, and this paper doesn't do it, but you need to do this. You should skip a line between the sentences and then skip a line and then write. And here's the reason why. If you have to use sentence structure because your instructor is all over the place and maybe they're a little bit over here and a little bit over there, sentence structure may be the best way, and you can put order to it later. But if your instructor or your professor is like all over the place, then you're going to want to skip lines because chances are they're going to be like, oh, hey, I forgot to also mention that the rough ER has whatever. And so you're going to have to like go back and put it in. The rough ER also has whatever. And so it'll help to prevent all of these like drawing lines all over the place. So if you have a professor who skips around, just write down what they say, but skip lines between it so you can go back and fill it in later. And here's the method that you are going to be quizzed over. I'm going to ask to see this. You're going to have to take a picture of how you've used this in a classroom. Oh, I'm almost at the time, huh? All right, so this is the Cornell method. What I want for you to do is go ahead and click on this. It's going to tell you about Cornell method. It's also going to tell you how you can make it a visual element. So on your paper, you'll need to do the Cornell method, and you're going to show it to me. Whenever you go into Google Classroom, there's a link for Cornell method. Go into that link. It has a template that you can use. You're going to show me a copy of your Cornell notes sometime next week. All right, I'm going to shut my mouth now, even though there is another slide about forgetting curve. Take a look at the forgetting curve. Forgetting is an important part of remembering. 70% of what you've just watched right now, you're not going to remember in 2 weeks, but maybe because it was dorky enough and because you were getting engaged, maybe you'll retain it for a longer period of time. Remember, retrieval method is one of the best ways for you to retain that. So you've seen it now once, go back and ruminate and think on it later, and then you'll remember that whenever you move on. Okay, I'm done talking. Y'all do your work. Get this Cornell, watch this video.
In your appearance by Mr. G.